Witches.
Hi, hello. Welcome back to another shadowed past. Bum, bum, bum. That was great. I love that. Um, so for those of you who don't know or the first time listening in on this, we did a tour in Charleston. So I'm from not from Charleston. I live in Charleston. Yo, it's crazy that I've been here so long and now I'm starting to say that.
Right?
I live in Charleston, and Brandy came to visit me, and she wanted to do this Dark Side of Charleston tour. So it wasn't a ghost store based. Like, there's a ghost story here and there, but it's about like legitimate, like true crime kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And we got inspired to do a little dark history kind of thing with that. And I went on it again, and I heard a cool story about Al Capone. And it's like you hear all kinds of stories about Al Capone, about his legacy, about what he's done in Chicago, and how he was this mastermind of, the 20s, essentially. Um, but like you never really hear about what he's done outside of that. So I'm going to talk about his fame and his rise of fame and how it compares between like Chicago, Charleston, and all of these kinds of places. But we're going to kind of focus on the Prohibition time of the 1920s. Um, so the Prohibition era, and honestly, the one who became its most famous symbol was Al Capone. So again, Capone's name is, synonymous with Chicago. Everyone knows about Al Capone and his Chicago days and all of these things, and like all kinds of information is strictly based out of Chicago. Well, his specific influence in the illegal alcohol trade had stretched across the country, and they even reached the swamps of Charleston, South Carolina. So we're gonna pour ourselves a glass of history, and we're gonna find out.
That was
Did
cute.
you like that? I was like, this is stupid, but it's quirky. Anyways, to understand Al Capone's influence, we need to talk about the prohibition itself. So the 18th Amendment took effect in 1920. It had banned the manufacture, sale, and transportation of alcohol across the United States. But again, instead of curbing alcohol consumption, which I'm not really sure the goal of the 18th Amendment, like I don't know if they wanted to stop alcohol because it was like a sin, um, wanting it to be like more righteous place. I'm not really sure. I didn't even, to be honest, I didn't really care enough about that um, to think about or to look up. But basically, it didn't curb any alcohol consumption. It just created a massive black market. And here's the thing about Charleston. South Carolina had already gone through a prohibition prior to this prohibition in 1920. And that's like a whole other story about a whole other like bigwig person from Charleston. And that's, something else that we could talk about later. But so essentially Charleston had like a pretty good idea how to handle this because they have already gone through it like 50 years prior to this. So because it became a black market, there were things called speakeasies. Moonshine was being created out in the wilds, and rum running became the norm. And organized crime syndicates obviously stepped in to meet that demand. It's easy work. I mean, you can get people to do the like nitty gritty for you. You can pay them to do all these things, and then if they get caught, then nothing goes against you. So it's like the perfect thing. So Capone was not the only one. he was very quick to capitalize on this opportunity. So obviously he's based in Chicago. He had built a bootlegging empire that supplied illegal alcohol to all its thirsty Americans across the country. And his network had extended far beyond Illinois, reaching states like South Carolina and as far down south as like Florida. But South Carolina had a pretty high moonshine production, and it flourished here. So there is actually a place not too far from me in Berkeley County called Hellhole Swamp. You can actually visit it. It's kind of I wouldn't say it's like a history whatever sort of thing. It's just a swamp that you can go visit and walk around. But it was swampy. It was a remote area, so it was easy to hide. And because of that, it became a hot spot for distilling high-proof corn whiskey, which was then smuggled to cities across the country. Ow, I hit my elbow. I hit my weenus. Anyways, okay. God damn it. It's just like, it throws off your entire brain. Ow. Oh. So anyways, this high-proof corn whiskey was then smuggled to cities across the country, including Chicago. So a little bit about Hellhole Swamp. It's got Charleston has a strategic coastal location, and it has a big history of maritime trade. I mean, 1600s. It's been here forever. There is a natural hub of trading goods here. So obviously it was a natural hub for smuggling during the Prohibition. Rum runners, who are those who bring rum and alcohol and everything from the Caribbean, or the Caribbean. So you mix that with your local moonshiners, who produce their own potent deep brews deep in the backwoods. Hellhole Swamp, basically, in particular, had gained actual national reputation for its moonshine. So mixing the maritime trade with the dense forest and waterways, it made it very hard for law enforcement to crack down on any of these illegal operations. So Charleston was booming. And Capone's connection to Charleston mainly centered on that moonshine trade. So local bootleggers such as Benjamin Villepontu, I think. It is a French word, and I know some letters don't have a sound. So I don't know. Anyways, they were rumored to have ties to Capone's network. Villepontu, a prominent figure in Berkeley County, had allegedly worked with Capone to produce and distribute moonshine that was then smuggled to Chicago and far beyond that location. There are even rumors that Capone had sent men to Hellhole Swamp to oversee operations or settle disputes. Now, those stories have taken on a mythical quality, but rumors still stand. Regardless of that, the remnants of old stills and hidden jugs discovered in the swamp serve as a testament to its role in the Prohibition era bootlegging network. So, if anyone wants to visit Hellhole Swamp in Berkeley County, they are more than welcome to walk amongst the grounds.
Thanks. Good.
You don't want to be with the skeeters and the gators?
That's the one. No, thank you.
Just go in the wintertime. It's cooler and less biting gnats.
Are there still gators?
They're chilling.
No.
Whatever. Anyways. It's really funny. Sometimes you'll go to like a location that has like a big thing of gators, and they'll say like gator spotted today or like gator sighting, be aware. And it's like, oh, okay. Do. Just keep going.
Listen, I was freaked out enough when we went on that boat to the island to like do the shark tooth thing.
Oh, really?
That boat with all the high grass and like little, I don't even know where those I don't know what that was. No, thank you.
Going through like the little swampy estuaries. Yeah.
No, that's what they're called, estuaries. No, thank you. I felt like I was in the book when the crawdads sing, or where the crawdads sing.
Isn't that
Um,
based out of here?
I don't know where it's based out
Or
of,
is
but
it?
either way, that's where I felt like I was.
You're like, either way, I won't be here.
I wanted to go to that island, and I would do it again to go to that island, but I did not
I
want
did not enjoy
to
the
be
ride.
on the water like that.
um, so see, and that's why bootlegging was so fucking easy. So Capone's influence on the alcohol trade obviously wasn't just limited to Charleston or Chicago. Again, it was nationwide. His bootlegging network supplied liquor to cities across the United States, making him one of the most powerful figures, if not the most powerful figures of the Prohibition era. And not only that, like we're talking about like the 1920s, so we're talking about like the Great Depression's happening, and then the um was the Great Depression in the 30s
It was like the
or
Roaring Twenties, and then the
that's what I
Depression
thought.
happened like after that. I'm
Yeah,
not
because in
entirely
World War
certain.
One. Either way, World War One just got over with. World War Two is like, occurring
The
in a
Great
few.
Depression started in 1929.
Oh, okay. Well, there you go. Um so like we're in like the middle of two major events coming, basically. So a lot of people are trying to curve something that they didn't even need to deal with, but whatever. So he is probably one of the most powerful um figures of the Prohibition era. So Capone's operations were so extensive that they had reportedly accounted for a significant portion of the illegal alcohol consumed in the country during the 20s. So, like, he
I
had
mean,
power.
yeah.
But obviously his impact went beyond the supply chain. He was also shaped the cultural perception of alcohol during Prohibition. While the government painted alcohol as a societal evil, Capone's speakeasies and nightclubs offered a glamorous alternative. So, jazz music, flapper fashion, and cocktails like the bee's knees became symbols of rebellion against the dry laws. And it's so weird, to be honest. It's weird to see, like, we've lived through 30 decades. We've seen history. It's so weird to see symbols change of rebellion
Mm-hmm.
based on what's happening. Like the 20s was jazz music, flappers, and cocktails. Like it's it's a dress style, and that was seen as a rebellion symbol
I
because
mean, I feel like you could argue that there are symbols of rebellion that are still fashioned now, like micro skirts and crop tops and tattoos and
nose piercings,
nose piercings.
colored hair.
Yeah. Those could, like, I feel like history books will call those symbols of rebellion when really they're
Yeah,
just the fashion statements of the intelligent people. My bad.
it's fine. Anyways, at the same at the same time, Capone's violent tactics and corruption highlighted the darker side of the illegal alcohol trade. There were obvious gang wars, bribery, and lawlessness that became hallmarks of the Prohibition era. Um, and a lot of people actually questioned if the 18th Amendment was worth the cost. So, like, you know how they're saying, like, the war on drugs and how, like, they're outlawing all drugs, and then it just became, like, bad
Yeah.
for everybody. There was no support, there was no anything. It was just like immediate detain, keep off the streets, no rehabilitation, no nothing, and then like back to everything. It's like it's a never ending cycle. And they notice like the amount of like marijuana counts went down or went away when they legalized weed in specific states. And it's like, if you can't
Duh.
fight them, like, specific states, okay? Specific states. Now, if you're, carrying like a giant amount of weed, like, then that's
Right. That's a different
something.
kind of charge, but like,
But a little tiny doobie, like, you ain't gonna get in trouble for. But, unless you're in like a state like South Carolina, don't do that.
or
Or
Indiana.
Indiana. Yeah, don't do that. But regardless of that, they're wondering if like the 18th Amendment was worth everything that's happening. So obviously we know that Capone was huge in Chicago and in Charleston, but like how did they differ really? So in Charleston, his influence was more behind the scenes. He was not really like the face of the location. The city's role was essentially just the supplier of moonshine and rum, in which why it was made a key player in his network. But the violence and corruption that was associated with Capone's empire was a little less pronounced. So instead, Charleston's story is like resilience and ingenuity as local bootleggers found ways to thrive despite all of the risks that came with their profession. So in Chicago, Capone's presence was very, very impossible to ignore. His empire dominated the city's nightlife, but it was also brought chaos and fear. For example, the St. Valentine's Day Massacre of 1929, which I actually spoke about, and you can go check it out. I did it on February 15th. So there were several members of a rival gang that were brutally murdered, and it remains one of the most infamous events of the Prohibition era, but also they never really truly found who did it. So they like, again, they suspect it was Capone because of like the rivalry between the two gangs, but they never actually pinned it on anybody essentially relating to his gang. I think they convicted like 2 of his members, but like trying as hard as they could, basically.
Convicted.
Yeah. Convicted. Yeah. But even in Chicago, Capone managed to cultivate, that Robin Hood image because and it's so weird to like idolize like a gang member, but let's be real. The fact that despite everything that he did, he opened up a lot of soup kitchens around Chicago. And he donated to multiple charities during the Great Depression. I mean,
It's
Home
giving
Dogs got.
Zayd.
That's what I'm saying. I was like, oh, we got a Zayd up in here. Like, you're not really evil, but you're also not really good either. Like, mm. But regardless, he is the Robin Hood of, the poor country, the poor America, the poor locations, because of, offering food where people literally had to sell their children because they couldn't afford to feed them. It was either them dying or selling them for money to feed the rest of their kids. And then he also donated to charities. So, what a man. I mean, do you see these men out here doing what he did? No. I didn't say he was a good man, but he a man nonetheless.
Just singing a song.
It's also impossible to talk about Al Capone without considering, like, the bigger context of the Prohibition. Obviously, the amendment was intended to stop or like prevent alcohol consumption, because it was not necessarily it was like a mortal sin, but like the values and the morals of everybody thinking they're going to take it away and it's going to be better. But obviously, it had the opposite effect on it. It had a nationwide black market, and it increased organized crime. on an unprecedented scale. So, I don't know, maybe some amendments shouldn't be passed because it causes upset
I feel like it's the same
on a whole
thing
other
like
thing.
with like raising children too, because like if you say you can't do that, you can't do that, you can't do that, okay, well that's
Honestly.
exactly what they're gonna fucking do. So
Right. Like, was it I don't remember, was it uh there was something I read and I don't remember if I talked to you about it or if I talked to somebody else about it. But it was like, you know how they sit there and say like peers against drugs or whatever, and they tell you like don't do this, don't do that, don't do this. Like rock stars do this and everyone's like I want to be a fucking rock star. Like
right.
that thing. It's like okay, maybe like don't use that
Right.
as your basis
Show
for
them the homeless people in the streets that spend all their money. Like, not all homeless people, let me be very
Hitler.
clear.
Show them
Not all
Hitler.
homeless people, but like, yeah, show them the crazy
Oh,
people.
I remember where it was. This was Tom Segura's stand-up night when I went. That's what it was because he
Oh
was
yeah, we
saying
did talk
this.
about this.
Yeah, he was talking about that, and he goes, "I didn't want to do drugs after I found out Hitler did everything on cocaine."
Right.
Like that's what I'm saying. But
Oh my gosh.
so like, mm, but anyways, so his story is like a testament to the unintended consequences of your actions. Government.
Yeah.
At the government. So in Charleston, it had turned moonshiners into folk heroes and created a legacy of resilience and ingenuity that Charleston still talks about today. In Chicago, it left more of a complicated mark because of violence and corruption, but also community survival in the face of hardship based on everything that has happened there, too. So, one thing is clear Al Capone's influence on alcohol, both in Charleston and across the country, was as far reaching as it was controversial. So, think on
Yeah.
that next time you want to go boat.
Ugh.
But if you have a topic that you'd like us to explore, let us know. Because, like, obviously, a lot of there, we only know what we're given, basically. It's kind of
Yeah.
hard to, like, find the deep, dark, naughty things of cities. So if you have a city that you want us to explore or a specific story you want us to explore, let us know. We're not very active
Absolutely.
on social media, but I still have access to all Facebook stuff. So let
And
us
if you
know.
listen on Buzzsprout, there is a spot on Buzzsprout where you can send us a direct message.
Spotify too. Add a
Yeah.
comment.
Yep.
And YouTube. You can do it on YouTube too. So yeah. Until next time.
Bye.